Yeah, thank you, Scott, for that intro, and thanks for everyone who took the time to join today. We appreciate it, and excited to show you travel and expense today. Keep in mind some of the things that Scott mentioned in terms of the process, because we've identified some key business processes that we do want to show in some of our examples today. I'll show one example for reimbursements for expenses, one for any credit card transactions. We'll also show how to submit expenses for mileage, and we'll talk a little bit more about those credit card transactions, how accounts payable loads up that file and then matches it to the receipts that have been submitted by those employees. Lots of different hats that I'll wear today in this demo. One of those hats will be as an employee who's submitting an expense, and then as an approver, as a manager who's actually making those approvals. And then that from an accounts payable perspective of actually posting and reviewing those expenses before posting. So to start on my screen, you see Business Central here. When you do install travel and expense, you are given a travel and expense role, an ExFlow specific role that gives you these tiles here in this setup that you see here on my BC screen, where I can see all my expenses that are ready for posting, pending approval, some of my unhandled transactions with my company cards, and then some of these expenses that I need to go ahead and reimburse my employees. On my phone that I'm sharing, let me make sure that this is going. Sorry about that.
Gotta love the live webinar.
Yeah, just looked away from my phone for a second and decided to close out, but no, it should be good. So for this example, I'm acting as Dan Jump, an employee who has gone out to coffee and has gone out to dinner, and now I have my receipts, and I need to go ahead and submit those receipts to be approved and then reimbursed, obviously. Really easy to do. We have this big plus button at the bottom here that gives me a few options. I can create an expense using a camera to actually capture the receipt and then send that to my manager for approval. I can also create an expense report where I can submit and attach specific expenses to maybe a trip. Us being a Swedish-based company, we go to Stockholm a lot, so I could put an expense report for a Stockholm trip, put all of my receipts towards that expense report, and then submit the entire report itself. But for here in today's example, I just have this receipt for coffee that I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of. So I'll select expense using my camera. I'll grab that receipt and I can go ahead and save. What you see, what it does is it brings in that receipt, obviously, it brings in today's date, the currency, and it also uses that OCR technology to grab what the amount on that receipt is. If it's ever incorrect, you can always go in and change what that amount is. But really the only thing that an employee would need to do is put in their description. So I'll just put coffee. And then I have the option to determine if I should be reimbursed for this expense if I use my own money, my own card, or if I use the company card, that it should be linked to this receipt. For this example, I'll just put employee as my payment method as I paid for this, and I'm looking to be reimbursed. And then from here, I just need to put in a category. These categories are tied to posting groups that we have set up in the background in BC that I'll show as we get further along in the demo. But for now, acting as an employee, I don't need to know those things. I just need to select meals as this was a coffee expense. If I have any projects or tasks, I could assign those here as well. And then if I have any participating employees, anyone else who had a coffee with me, I could go here and look through my list of employees that we have set up in BC, select that individual, and then I can keep moving on with this expense. But for now, I'll just put this in as Dan Jump as the only person for this expense. I can also add any notes if I want to. If I need to do that, I could add any additional info. And then from here, it's as simple as just sliding and submitting this expense. And then I can see where that is on my dashboard, and I can go ahead and refresh and send that expense for approval out to my manager. Let's do one more. I'm going to grab a different receipt here for a dinner that I had with some employees. Let's go ahead and save that. I'll put dinner with coworkers. And I'm going to say that I paid for this one as well. And then I could put in a category of meals. And then let's add my friend Eric Gruber here as my person that I had dinner with, and he should split the cost with me for this dinner. From here, again, all I have to do is slide and submit, and it will go ahead and send that out for approval to my manager. After I do that, let's go back into Business Central.
Can we take a quick pause here, Sawyer? I was waiting for a logical point for us to talk. Couple of questions. This comes up all the time, and if we want to talk about this more extensively, feel free to reach out to me directly. One of the questions that we get asked all the time is these individuals who are using the app, do they need to have a Business Central license? The answer is, and I'm going to kind of step back a little bit here. Up until a couple of years, ago, Microsoft was very lax on their enforcement of scenarios where you essentially had expenses coming in through a central repository into Business Central or F&O or whatever ERP it was. So up until a couple of years ago, you did not need a license to be submitting expenses unless you were directly in Business Central. What Microsoft has done, and I'll actually send out a link to this in the follow-up email, they've changed that requirement from a compliance perspective. Anyone who's pushing data into BC needs to have a team member license. So not a full license, but a team member license. Ironically, pretty much all the expense management and AP automation solutions out there, ours included, will work without that license. But that's your call, and you should talk to your CSP about that, because if you do that, and I'm taking my sign-up hat off here, other solutions will say you don't need it. You really need it. So team member license, if you are just submitting, not working in BC. Long answer to a short question. And the other question here, we'll table this. We got a question about tax. We'll talk about that at the end. And then we got a question about OCR. I can't see who submitted who the attendee is. I can just see the questions. But the answer to the OCR piece is that essentially, and keep me honest here, Sawyer, everyone who is submitting expenses submit it through the TEM app that you can download from the Apple Store or Android. It's free. And then the OCR is contained within the app to do the recognition of the receipt. So it's pretty light, and you saw with what Sawyer did here, pretty quick. But the answer is it's being done on the mobile device, or you also have the ability, and I'm kind of stealing Sawyer's thunder here, you have the ability to submit expenses through the online portal as well. So if you want more clarification, follow up with a question. We'll address it at the end. And then now, as getting back to where we're done submitting expenses, and now we'll go into BC.
Yeah, I did see one question about actually entering an expense report. Let me do that real quick for Jordan and chat. If I just hit the plus button here and create an expense report, I'll create the description as something like Stockholm trip. I can add any additional info. I can add a project or a task if I had any here, but I would just go ahead and create this. And then from here, I could go ahead and every expense that I select, I can add it to this Stockholm trip here, and then for when I submit it, my manager will be able to see the actual expense reports and then see all of the expenses that are tied to it, and they can go through and approve or reject any of those. Continuing on with the process though, now that I've submitted a few expenses, acting as Dan Jump, now switching hats and thinking about it from a manager's perspective of actually approving those expenses, we do have a great portal here. And actually, let me refresh my screen in Business Central so we can see some of those, a few more receipts coming in. I can see that here in my running count on my tiles. But we do have a great approval portal because we do recognize that even with a team member license, those restrictions or those users are allowed to do in Business Central are really restricted. So users who aren't typically in BC would absolutely use this web approval portal to approve any of those expenses. Acting as Esther now, as Dan Jump's manager, I can see that a couple expenses came through. If I want to see the details on those, I can just hit the drop down and I see the image of the receipt that was actually taken, which is great. I can see what the value is, how much of was on those receipts. I can also see any participating employees, so I can see that Dan and Eric went out to dinner together here. And then I can also see a breakdown of some more expenses. If I keep on going down, I can see the coffee expense that we just submitted as well. This meets my criteria, and I can go ahead and approve this acting as manager. I don't have to approve every single one individually though, so I can just select this checkbox up here and approve all of them all together. In terms of those expense reports that I was talking about, I do want to show that real quick in the approval portal. I can see that I created an expense report for a Sweden trip, and then from here I can see all of the expenses that are tied to this expense report, and I can approve the entire thing once it's all complete and submitted. So once I'm done approving, now this goes back on accounts payable in Business Central for them to review the expenses and then to ultimately post those, and if it requires reimbursement, to actually process the reimbursement. Let me go ahead and refresh BC to get those expenses up here. And I can see that I have 4 that are ready for posting, so I can just jump into this tile and see that Dan has a few expenses that have been approved. I can see all the details around these expenses, what the date was, what the category code was. That gives me a good indication, acting as accounts payable, that depending on what the category code is, I'll know what the posting groups are going to be or what accounts it will be posted to. You can always see the details if I click into that category code, I can see more details of where it's going to be posted to. And then obviously, if any of these should be reimbursed or used a company card, I can see the payment method there and how much all these expenses were. Okay, let's go ahead and let's post one of these. Okay, and let me post one of these that need reimbursement as well. Let's go back out of here. And now as accounts payable, there are some expenses that are pending reimbursement now. So I could always jump into this tile and pay our employees back. What I can do here, it's really simple. I have a few different expenses here for Dan and Eric, and I can create the payment lines for all these expenses if I just select create payment lines here. And then it goes to my payment journal where then I can go ahead and post these reimbursements, review anything else that I need to briefly, and then just simply post. Okay. Let's go back now and talk a little bit more about the setups, or maybe this would be a good point to stop for questions if there's anything, Scott. Let's see here. I do have a question in the chat from Jenny. This is a separate portal than the one approvers use for regular invoices. If you're referring to ExFlow AP, Yes, this is a different approval portal than the ExFlow AP web approval portal. So yes to that question. And can the global dimensions be added as required fields as well as a selection for the GL account? Yes, so we'll go through and set up and show you kind of the setups in the background for travel and expense, and maybe that'll answer some of your dimension questions. Scott, keep me honest here. I don't want to say something that I shouldn't, but at least with dimensions, I believe in future versions, and you're on mute as well if you wanted to kind of talk to this.
Yep. No,
Just
I think you're right on. I think you're right on the money there. Jacob had a couple of questions in the Q&A. Question was, can you input rules on policies for TRX per diem? The answer is yes. You can categorize limits on those that will trigger either a rejection or an approval workflow for those to be exempted. Can you scan receipts on the go and leave them in a staging area? Yes, you can, because we actually use TEM, and that's what I do. So what I like to do is I like to pop a picture of my receipts, get them into the app, and then throw the receipt away. And then when I have time to just kind of bang it all out, that's what I'll do. So that, yes, you can. Can you email receipt pictures and have them imported into the expense tool? The answer to that, Sawyer, I believe is no. We do not. But what we do, and the context was about forwarding that into an email forwarding for reconciliation. Ironically enough, we see this a lot where people will actually take very large invoices that come in and treat them like expenses. And what we've seen is people say, oh, if I want to forward that in, I might want to treat that as a true invoice and not an expense. But if you always have the ability to upload through the portal, a PDF or a TIFF image, and it'll be recognized and it'll go through the portal.
And if you save those as like a picture on your phone or something, you can load those up as well. You don't, if it's saved on your phone like that, you can absolutely load them up, and it would treat it the same way. Still use the OCR technology in TEM to read the receipt, even if it's just a picture that you took from days ago or something. Also, what's really nice about this is if you're in an area that doesn't have internet, or you don't have to wait until you get internet or Wi-Fi to be able to actually just take a picture of the expense and create it. You can take a picture of the receipts, create the expense, and then when you get internet, you can go ahead and submit it. But that way, you're not having to hold on to some receipts when you're in somewhere where it doesn't have very good service. You can take a picture of it, throw that receipt away immediately, and then submit the expense when you get internet.
Perfect. All right, I think we can keep going, and then I'm gonna aggregate some of those other questions that are coming in, and we'll make sure we address them at the end.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it. So to continue, there's another example I did want to show. Before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the setups in the background. And it's all set up in Business Central, as Scott has mentioned plenty of times, built in BC. All of our setups are done in BC. If we go to our travel and expense overview, we have all of our options of how we want to set up travel and expense here for us. Let's go to my expense categories. This is how I'm creating the link to the posting groups. And when you are selecting a category on TEM, whether it's meals, hotel, whatever it may be, those are going to be directed to specific posting groups depending on the circumstance. So if you can see here at the bottom with these lines, When I select meals and it's domestic, it should go to this posting group of meals. If I am ever abroad, maybe that'll be posted differently. And if I'm with any clients and I select any guests on travel and expense, it would use this meals with client posting group and direct it to a specific GL account of where it should be posted to. We can include those dimensions as well. Let's go back out of the categories and look at the actual posting groups. Where here, the details of all those groups and what account it actually goes to. You can see that here in these just general posting groups like you would see in just base BC. And we do have a couple different payment groups or a couple payment groups set up as well, where it's just an employee would select if they're going to be reimbursed or if they use a credit card. What's also nice is we do have a shortcut here for our employees and how we set them up with TEM. From here, I can assign a company credit card to Dan. If I go to my ExFlow Travel and Expense, I can see all the cards that are assigned to Dan. You can see I have a MasterCard assigned to him here. And then if I have any vehicles that I also want to assign to him as well, I could do that here, where I just have a car assigned to Dan. So that's just a quick intro to some apps in the background. We do have a couple other things where you can actually add those credit cards. And I know there was a question around per diems and how you set those up and how they're posted and the calculation rule behind that. But if there's any questions around setups around TEM, we love to spend some time after this in Q&A answering any of your questions. But we'll keep moving on with our demo today. So the next example I did want to go over is when you have a mileage expense that you need to submit. So let me go ahead and reshare here. Should see that coming up. There we go. All right. So I live in Austin, Texas, so I'm going to go ahead and submit a expense from Austin to San Antonio. I tend to make that drive a lot. So I'll just put in here in my description as San Antonio trip. And then I can put in where I'm from. I'll just put Austin. And I'll put San Antonio on where I'm going to. It will use Apple Maps to calculate what the route is that I'll take. If I need to change the route, I can go in here and say that maybe I took a different route. I would just put in, I have my car assigned to me acting as Dan Jump, so I don't need to change that. If I had multiple vehicles, I could hit the drop down and select which one I took. My unit's going to be miles, and it calculated that it's about 79.2 miles to get to San Antonio. This isn't going to be a part of an expense report, so I can go ahead and delete that out. If I wanted to put any additional info, I could. Now, the cool thing here is when I do slide and submit, I am given a couple options if I want to continue my trip, meaning maybe I go down to San Antonio and then I want to take a quick pit stop and drive a couple hours to Houston before I go back to Austin. I could say I can continue that trip and add another stop. Or travel and expense assumes that I'm going to go back home at some point. So I could always choose back to start, and it will create the route from me from San Antonio back to Austin as well, and actually create 2 mileage expenses that going to San Antonio and then going home. So let's just put the back to start here. And then when I slide to submit, it will actually create 2 of those mileage expenses for me, as you can see here. From here, I'll just refresh and send those over to my my manager for approval. Let's move my phone screen over. Let's refresh Business Central to see a couple of those mileages come through. There we go. So now we have our mileage tab here with 2 of them pending approval. And so now when I was Dan, I submitted those. It needs to go to Esther to go ahead and approve. So now I can see that there's 2 more mileages here in my tab where I can look at those and approve. I'll just hit the drop down and see what I always can see the image of what the trip was and where I was going to. I can see the distance and the rate that I have created in the background in BC is being calculated properly. I'll go ahead and show that setup in a moment. But from here, just like those expenses that I submitted earlier, I can just go ahead and approve both of these together and go to approve. After this, now going from Dan to Esther, now it's back on accounts payable back in BC to see, and when they refresh their screen and they're on here, they'll be able to see that there's 2 mileage expenses that are ready for posting. So I'll just go here. I can select both of these and then just post. There we go. The setup of the rates for that car, if I go back to my travel and expense overview, I have my travel rates section here where I would create the car description is just my rate for that car, and then you can put your rate in here per mile of what that person should be reimbursed. Okay. We do recognize that there are some scenarios where I think I believe in Canada, if you go over a certain mileage threshold, that you would get a different rate. So we do have a starting from column here where you can put how many miles you've driven so far that year, so that way the rate would then accurately reflect when it does change whatever that threshold is for this rate to change on this car. Okay. So that was my example for mileage. Now, in terms of credit card transactions, we do recognize that a lot of companies will download the CSV file from their bank accounts to get all of their transactions on that card for maybe the entirety of the month. What we can do is we can actually manually upload that CSV file and create some transactions here. As you can see, I've already loaded this in, but to actually show you the Excel sheet and what it looks like, this is what it would look like. It would give me my posting date, transaction date, what that account is, aka what that card is, and then who the card holder is. I would get some details on where it was, and then just what the amounts were for each of those transactions. From here, I load this into Business Central for then my match up those receipts with those transactions to then finally post them. There's kind of 2 different ways that you can handle this. Users can go in and submit their expenses, take a picture of their receipt, enter the payment method as a credit card, and then it would sit in their dashboard until accounts payable has loaded in this file to then match up that receipt to the transaction. Or they could do the opposite, where accounts payable load in all these transactions, and then in my TEM app, I would see, and let me get this back to show, I would see all of the transactions that I need to actually match a receipt to. Let me make sure I got my screen share going again on my phone. It closes out so quick for me. Right. So let's go ahead and create these transactions. I will say yes. Okay. And then back in my TEM app, now I can see all those transactions that have been uploaded by accounts payable and submitted. And now I know that I have some receipts that I need to match up to the actual transaction. So let's go to this Maggie Oaks one here, and I can say that I have a receipt and actually scan that receipt. Let me get the Maggie Oaks one up. There we go. We'll scan this. We can go ahead and save. So now I have the receipt here. The amount's already brought in properly. I can change the country since that was a Canadian receipt. But it already has the card assigned to me, has the amount. I would just put the currency or the category in here for it to match up to the correct posting group. If I had an expense report that I wanted to assign this to, I could assign it to that Stockholm trip, any projects and tasks, obviously, and any participating employees. One really nice thing that I don't think I mentioned yet is if you have any guests that aren't employees, any clients that you're going out to dinner with, and you want to add them to the expense, you could hit this little plus button, hit the plus button up there, and then create that client or that guest, and have them actually assigned to the expense as well. And then from here, I can just go ahead and slide and submit. Now that that receipt has been matched up with that expense or that transaction, I can just go ahead and refresh. Let's go back here. And now I have a few of these unhandled transactions that I would need to post, obviously get approved, and then post, just like any of those other expenses I worked with before. We usually get a lot of questions around these company credit cards and how we load that CSV file in and the process around it. Happy to answer any of those questions, but for now, unless I missed anything, Scott, I think that's everything I wanted to go over today.